Hello YouTube and welcome to Prime Productions. I'm here to help enhance your tabletop gaming experience. If you're new to this channel, I primarily focus on Paizo tabletop role-playing games like Pathfinder and Starfinder. And if you want to help me out, I have a Patreon and Discord, more info at the end of the video. Okay, so Paizo Live time. Every month Paizo puts out a Twitch video called Paizo Live where they talk about books and products coming down the pipeline, and I want to summarize it for you here today. Now, this latest Paizo Live came out on Friday, March 6th, 2026, and in order to get it out on the next day, I have to do a very fast turnaround. I don't have an editor or anything, it's just me doing this, and so this is going to be a quickie video, and I may misspeak or have some ums or uhs, I'm sorry. But before we get started, there were actually two bonus Paizo Lives at the end of February to talk about products that were like 6+ months out. I covered one of them, but the second one came out like 12 hours before I had to go to my own tiny local gaming con, so I didn't have time to cover it, so I'm going to talk about it here. So first, the end of February Paizo Live, and then the one that occurred on March 6th, 2026. So the February 27th, 2026 video, remember these were product announcements, and there will be more information about them as they approach their release date. The first book they talked about was Feybound. This is a source book for all things Fey, including at least one new Bard subclass, or Muse as they're called, and probably a bunch of Fey creatures. They talked about how there are 7 different types of Fey, they called it circles of Fey, from the primal loving nature kind of Fey to the regal court kind of Fey to the trickster Fey to the quote, down in the gutter crusty Fey. The book will also have a bunch of Paizo-specific fairy tales associated with Fae, including really cool artwork. Then comes Lost Omen's Cheliax's Infernal Inheritance. Now, as a reminder, Lost Omen books are like part setting lore books, and they also have some player options. This covers what happens to Cheliax after the Hellfire company-wide event. As a reminder, the Hellfire Crisis is where the country of Cheliax goes to war with the country of Andrin, with the country of Isgir caught in the middle. So after the Hellfire Crisis, the country of Cheliax will be changed, but not gone entirely, but the section known as Old Cheliax, which used to contain the countries of Cheliax, Ravenel, Isgir, and Nidal, will now be known as the Infernal Inheritance region. It was kind of hard to figure out what they were saying, but that's what I got out of it. They will have 2 remastered Ancestries, the Strix and the Fetchling. Those were in Pathfinder 2nd Edition before, but they haven't been remastered yet. And also an entirely new ancestry to Pathfinder called the Bugbear. I've actually really wanted the Bugbear ancestry for a really long time. It's one of the few D&D ancestries that Pathfinder doesn't have, and well, now they're going to get it, so I'm super happy about that. Then they talked about Tech Core. Tech Core is the last of the mainline core Starfinder books to come out. It will have the classes of Technomancer and Mechanic, and yes, they did fix them from the playtest, or at least that's what they said. This book will have new archetypes like the Nanocyte, which was previously a Starfinder 1st Edition class. Now, the Nanocyte wasn't terribly well received, so they've kind of downgraded it to an archetype, so it will be interesting to see what it looks like. They also said that there's a new archetype called Junkomancer, but they didn't give much information about that. They did say that the book will contain tactical starship combat rules, which are rules to move around the battlefield in starship combat. Previously, starship combat was done with a more cinematic kind of thing where it's just a bunch of skill checks. Now there's actually codified rules for how to pilot your ship and choosing where your starship goes. They said that there are 3 new ancestries in this book: the SRO, which is a sentient robot that has a soul, Living Hologram, which is a hologram with a soul, and the Verthani, who are just humanoid aliens. There's going to be new items and spells, including non-arcane spells like Kill 9, which is a divine spell that wrecks constructs, and of course they talked about the new rank 9 spell Summon Giant Robot, which they pointed out is a possibility to use in Pathfinder because there are a few giant robots in Pathfinder. I mean, they're magical instead of technological, but yeah, GMs be aware. And of course, because everybody wants to know, this is slated for an early October release, 2026. But that's it for the February Paizo Live. Let's move on to the March 6th Paizo Live. This was a huge one. It was over 2 hours long, and most of that, almost an hour of it, was taken up by one product called the Hellfire Dispatches. So unlike Infernal Inheritance, this book focuses on the war itself and Isgir, Cheliax, Absalom, Andoran, and Rahadum, not the new Infernal Inheritance region. They said that there's a lot of political storytelling in this book. For example, there's a wall called the Aspadian Wall that blocks off the border of Andoran and Cheliax. So Cheliax can still like go through the wall and to attack because they have like ways around it, but Andoran can't counterattack, so that's pretty good for Cheliax. They said that the book talks about politicking in Absalom. Now remember, Absalom is an independent city-state, but it's also super important and a major hub of trade, so both Andoran and Cheliax are trying to use politicking to get support from people there. They talked about the Sisters of the Golden Irines, who are like battle nuns who run orphanages in Isgir and try to recruit people into the Chelaxian cause. The book talks about naval battles, as well as the Chelaxian navy way outclasses the Andoran navy, which leads Andoran to try and control this area called the Arch of Eredin, which is basically like the real-life Strait of Gibraltar. See, Andoran is trying to bring pirates through the Arch of Eredin and turn them into privateers against Cheliax, and Cheliax controls this waterway, so, like, a lot of logistics and politicking and cool stuff if you're into military history. They said that the book will contain a lot of skirmish encounters and like enemy troops, so like there's Andoran troops and Chelaxian troop stat blocks. They said that they've remastered the Hell Knight archetype. Remember, Abigail Thrune tries to nationalize the Hell Knights at the start of the Hellfire Crisis, and not all join her because, technically speaking, they're supposed to be politically independent, but like she's trying to fold them into the Chelaxian army. I said there was a lot of politicking in this book. Anyway, the new Hell Knight archetype is just one huge archetype with just a huge number of subsequent feats, and there's still options for every Hell Knight order. It's just a lot better organized, they said. Before the remaster, there were actually several different Hell Knight archetypes. They did say that the book has 3 new Eagle Knight archetypes. Remember, Eagle Knights are like the Hell Knight counterparts in Andoran. They're like politically independent, but mostly still loyal to Andoran. Now, there is an existing Eagle Knight archetype, but you don't need to complete that archetype in order to get into these other Eagle Knight archetypes. Piso has done something similar to this with the Mungambian Attendant and Halcyon Speaker archetypes, so it's nothing new. They also said that there was a Pure Legion Enforcer archetype, which was like an archetype of people who hate all divine magic, and they exist down in Rahadum. They also talked about an expansion for the Snare Crafter archetype with like gnome fey magic trap stuff. Now this gets to politicking, but in a later Q&A section, they talked more about the Hell Knights, so I need to talk about them here. Remember, Hell Knights are supposed to be politically independent, but Abigail Thrune at the start of the Hellfire Crisis tries to nationalize them and force them all to join the Chelaxian army. Now, some Hell Knight orders really like this. The orders of the Gate, Pyre, and Rack, who are all like super pro Cheliax, do join up with Thrune willingly, along with the minor orders of the Glyph and Wall. The orders of the Scourge and Torrent, who are like anti-political corruption and the Torrent is all about saving people, abjectly refuse. And then the orders of the Godclaw and Nail are kind of sitting on the fence because they have members of the order that lean both ways. Anyway, they then moved on to the Galactic Ancestries book, which is a 224-page book. It has new ancestries for Starfinder, specifically this is a Starfinder book, also new feats and new heritages for existing ancestries, and also rules for bringing legacy or Pathfinder ancestries like elves and goblins into Starfinder. Specifically, this book has Pathfinder Player Core 1 ancestries, so you're not going to find anything from like Player Core 2 in here, I'm sorry. But the book does have 21 new ancestries, as well as 2 new versatile heritages, so I'm going to talk about what they talked about. First of all, they talked about new standard ancestry feats. Now, they didn't explain this terribly well, but I think what happens is that these are feats that are common to many different ancestries. I think this is similar to how, like, the Quick Draw class feat can be taken by multiple different classes and archetypes. So what I think is happening is like this is a way of consolidating a bunch of ancestry feats that do the same thing across multiple ancestries. They've kind of already done this, like there's multiple feats that give you armor to skin. Now they're just all codifying it and say this one feat is takeable by like 4 or 5 different ancestries. Anyway, they didn't explain it that well. I think that's what I got out of it though. They did post this fun artwork of all the child ancestries from Starfinder Player Core 1. That was super fun. Then they got into some of the new aliens or ancestries, like this ooze alien called a Fuquagon, I think. They were kind of hard to understand. There's also the Madrasoi, I think, which are six-figured emotional-based aliens. They also talked about heritages for existing ancestries like the Saberine, which is a Patra heritage, and they nicknamed him the Absolute Unit Patra. By the way, Absolute Unit is an ancestry feat that these heritage Patra can take. They are still medium-sized, but there is a large-sized Patra heritage called Proudhome, but we didn't get a picture of those. Also, I need to point out the Axolotl Vesk. I love that. They nicknamed this the Vescolotl. They also talked about how there's a bunch of legacy stuff in there, like there are Leshy feats to make space Leshies, including the ability to produce oxygen to animalistic creatures like shown in this picture. Then they showed this picture that has a bunch of new aliens from this book, or they're at least new to Starfinder 2nd edition. There's the Easelgun, the Kopoxi, the Riforian, and the Otter-like Venari. They also talked about ant-like Formians, Octorons, who are like a acid-spitting mad cultist-like ancestry, Urog, who are silicone-based efficiency experts. This one is a fan of the iconic Day. By the way, I'm sorry if I mispronounce any of these ancestries. They did not give a pronunciation guide. I'm just doing the best I can. They also talked about some spoilers like the Lucky Squawks feat, which is a halfling feat that lets you run for cover at the start of combat. They talked about a new Lashunta heritage called Genetic Pioneer. And then they talked about the two new versatile heritages, which are gap-touched, and they didn't really elaborate on that at all, and the Xenometric android, which is an android in the shape of a non-human ancestry. So, like, this one is a Formian android. And then lastly, in the Q&A, they talked about the N2 colony ancestry, which is sentient fungus that takes over a non-sapient animal and then makes them sapient, or asks them to make them sapient, and then if they do, it makes them sapient. So, like, you can take an N2 colony that has taken over a Squawks, which is like a little tiny fox squirrel thing. They're kind of one of the mascots of Starfinder. Which means if you're keeping track, yes, that is another way to play an animal in Pathfinder or Starfinder. The final thing they talked about were the Piso Printables. This is a subscription service to get downloadable Starfinder and Pathfinder STL files. It's going to be a monthly subscription service, and you pay to get roughly 6 STL files a month that you can download and 3D print if you have a 3D printer. Anyone who joins at any time also gets the iconic STL files as a bonus. They may just be the iconics from Player Core 1. They did not elaborate very much. They did say that all of these are going to be compatible with a war game done by one-page rules, which is a tabletop war game like Warhammer 40k, only the rules are supposed to be very compact and fit on, well, one page. From what I can tell, the rules are open source and free to download, so you can just use these STLs and then that free rule set and play a war game using Pathfinder. They said that the first few months are going to be Pathfinder exclusive, but there may be Starfinder minis that they make down the road. Check the Paizo website blog for more details if you want to get started. The first batch should be coming out on April 2nd. Anyway, that's all I had for today. There was a Q&A section, but I just put the questions in their relevant sections. As a reminder, I have a Patreon. I'm going to try and post something fun there once a month, but honestly, it's just a way to keep this channel financially viable. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee a month, you can help me buy new equipment like new microphones and such. And of course, I do have a Discord channel. Drop by and say hi. I'd love to talk to you. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That tells not only me, but also YouTube that you like this video and would like to see more. And until next time, thank you, good luck, and happy gaming.